Good evening and welcome to our webinar on the 18th edition draft for public comment. My name is Steve Watton and I'm the scheme manager here at NAPIT. With me tonight is Frank Bertie, NAPIT Trade Association Chairman and Technical Director, and Richard Townsend, formerly of the IET and now Technical Development Engineer here at NAPIT. They'll be taking you through the presentation. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to use the Ask a Question function which is in your control panel, and for most of you this will be on the right hand of your screen. We'll do our best at the end to get through as many of these as we can. You'll also find a copy of the presentation, some useful guidance and a certificate of attendance in the handout section in the control panel, which you can download for your records. We'll leave a couple of minutes at the end of the session to give you time to open and save this if you wish. There'll also be a short survey at the end of the webinar, and we'd really welcome your feedback to make sure that these webinars are as useful as possible going forward. So I'll pass you through to Frank and Richard to get things started.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to cover the 18th edition draft of public comment on how to use the DPC, how to access it, and in tonight's session we're going to cover parts 1 to 4 because there's quite a bit of information to go through. So why are we having a new edition of 7671? As with everything, new technologies, new ideas, new ways of working within the electrical installation industry becomes available, and BS 7671 has to adapt and evolve. Many of these changes are driven by updates to international electrical technical documents, which the UK is required to include in 7671.
Okay, so what's a DPC? Well, a draft for public comment is the method by which BSI updates its British standards. It's not just 7671 that goes through this process, it's all British standards. And with BS 7671, the controlling committee is JPL 64 and its 4 subcommittees, A, B, C and D. When the DPC comments have all been received and sorted into their various departments, they will be worked through, modified, altered, added to, and then when JPL 64 have finalised the draft for the next iteration of 7671, which will be the 18th edition, it will be published on July 2018 to go live January 2019.
So where can we find the DPC? The DPC can be located on the BSI website on this link below, and this is where you could do your online comments for covering anything you find in the DPC.
Okay, so before you get going, you've got to register. You've got to go onto BSI's site, and that's the opening page there. Once you've clicked on the link that Frank has just given you, it will take you to here, and you go to account and you register. You've got to register your details. It's going to ask you for your name, an email, maybe some telephone numbers, various bits and pieces. Once you've done that, that's not just 7671 that you can comment on, it's all of BSI's documents. So this is not just for registering to comment on BS 7671, this is all of BSI's standards.
And after you've registered, if you look at the bottom of the home page, you can search for the DPC on the browser by the subject, or you could look for it under the listing of construction. If you type in BS 7671 in the browser section and type the search, it will take you through to the section where you'll find the draft for public comment.
So once you've selected the DPC, the details will appear and will include all the drafts in this category. So as you can see in this screen grab here, we've got them all across there. 7671 is there, we've highlighted that for you. If you then punch view, press on view, it will take you to the next table or the next screen to allow you to be able to comment.
On the section, you can select the DPC and the details will appear on the screen. It will show you the committee that is responsible for the DPC, and that is JPL 64. And it also shows you the origin of the comment form for the DPC and the closing date for the DPC. And those dates at the moment it was due to go live on the 1st of June. There has been a few hiccups on the technical access to the DPC, which is now available. The closing date at current state is still the 23rd of August. It's a closing date. It might be extended for a few days, but that's unclear yet. So what you do next is you click on Read Draft and Comment as the next page you go forward.
And that's the commenting page. In red, on the left-hand side, you can see there, if you click on those, it will take you to those areas of the DPC. Or you can come over here to this red bar and scroll down and go through the entire document. I've got to point out at this point that the document is in its entirety, so the various changes are not highlighted as they have been done in the past. So you will have to kind of look at what the new document is and compare it to the existing document to actually see the changes.
The draft details page also allows you to have an add and view comments tool, which also includes a number of comments received. So when you click on this section, it takes you through to the next page to look at the regulation and look at the comments that are on there. And in brackets, you can see if there's any comments being allotted to that regulation. Those, when you have comments on there, you can look at them, you can see what other people have commented on. And if you want to add to that comment and have an interest in that comment, please add a comment to it. The more comments you have against a regulation that is considered not suitable for by yourself or by others, the more comments that are added, the more consideration is taken to those comments.
Okay, so when you clicked on add or view comment, this table pops up. So here you're going to add a comment. Please no swearing, because this is going to be moderated by BSI. So it has to be a clean and proper comment stating why you think something should be changed. That's no problem, but you've also got to put a proposal forward, which is just underneath there.
So when you've clicked on the add to view comments, you have the option to provide a proposed change. So after you've made your comment against the regulation, you have to submit what you've proposed the change to be, to make the regulation more suitable, or if it's a case to remove it, to be removed. But there must be a reason and a justification to remove a regulation. And if you fail to add anything into the proposed change, you can't go any further. You won't be able to click on the save button and submit. It won't take you through because you haven't completed that section.
Okay, so when you made your proposal, you'll be asked to decide whether you're going to call that a general, editorial, or a technical change, or comment, or proposal. You get 3 coloured boxes to allow you to either then discard, save, or submit your comment.
If you click the discard button, this allows you to delete the comment you have made and allows you to go back and submit a fresh comment on that one. If you want to go back, you can go back to make the changes, or you cancel it if you don't want to, you want to keep that comment, or you click continue and it gets rid of the comment. It takes you back to resubmit your comment.
If you choose to save, it allows you to look at your comment later on before you submit it. If you look over on the right hand side of this screen grab, you've got review, which is the state that it's in now, submit and delete. In the save and remove review mode, these are not live documents. Nobody else can see your comments or proposals, and at this point they're not registered. However, should you forget to go back and confirm them by submitting, then they won't be seen at all and they'll have been wasted. So whenever you save or put into a review any comment or proposal, you've got to ensure you go back and submit it, or it won't be seen.
As we covered here, you've got your third options to submit, which will publish your comment, and by selecting this, it's final. You cannot edit that comment once you've submitted it. And your comment will then be published by BSI after moderation. As Richard touched on earlier, any foul language or inappropriate comments will be disregarded and the comment will not be submitted for public view.
Okay, so we're going to work through a few. So part 1, fundamental principles, very minor changes. So throughout BS 7671, lowercase AC and DC have been changed to uppercase AC and DC in line with European documentation. Onshore units, electrical shore connections for inland navigation vessels has been added to the installations that BS 7671 applies to. So Regulation 110.1.1 has been altered. Regulation 120.3 now includes Part 8 energy efficiency. Regulation 133.1.3 refers to equipment outside the scope or not in accordance with it, but should be noted on the installation certificate. There have been some changes to Part 6. These are number changes based around a European change in the main document. BSI and the IET and the National Committee are looking to make the European number change to our Part 6 so that in later iterations it's easier for us to refer back to the international document when referring to our own document.
Within Part 2, the definitions have been expanded and modified. We have the backup protection has been rewritten. With the bonding conductors, there's a more detailed explanation to the purpose of bonding conductors. There are several new items covering short circuit protection, which have been covered in definitions. The terms continuity of service has now been referenced on what that applies to. Control and protective switching devices have been added. Control of electrical coordination of electrical equipment has been included. Departure. This is an important reference because previously departures have been added to as a defect, but departure is a deliberate action by designer of an installation to make inclusion of equipment that is not included within the requirements of the regulations, but must be seen to be carried out to no less a standard of safety as would apply to BS 7671. So a designer might include something that's not yes had a product standard included in it, but this is put down as a departure, and the details of that departure must be included within the electrical certification and any relevant design sheets why that's been included. Departure is not a non-compliance. Within the definitions, there's been several definitions that have been grouped together where they only apply to a relevant chapter or regulation to make it clearer to understand, and it doesn't apply to the general content of the regulations.
Yeah, so definitions for backup protection. Energy efficiency, as previously mentioned, has been introduced with definitions relating to Part 8. These are all sectioned in one part together. So you'll see in the DPC that definitions for Part 8 are all being kept together because most of them only refer to Part 8. Foundation earth electrode makes an appearance. Inland navigation vessels have been described as they are now part, or BS 7671 now refers to them. Isolation has been modified. Non-compliance is laid out as a non-conformity, which may give rise to danger. Overcurrent protected device has now been defined. Selectivity, partial selectivity, total selectivity have all been defined now. RCD has been modified, 3 notes have been introduced. The notes sort of basically tell you what different types of RCDs there are. Selectivity has been introduced after the removal of discrimination, and a greater definition and explanation of it has been given.
We've also got some information on short circuit definitions referring to surge protected devices that have been introduced to make it clearer what the information regarding surge protection devices and the different formulas apply to. Switch has been reworded to make it clearer what the purpose of a switch is, as switching has also been introduced, so it's clear what we mean by the method of switching. And total selectivity has been introduced with, in conjunction with the changes from discrimination to selectivity.
Okay, symbols and abbreviations. There are some minor modifications to the symbols. Abbreviations at this point remain the same. However, after and during the DPC process, the national committees may decide to add or remove various parts and sections which may require a new symbol or a new abbreviation. So these generally get cleared up more as a general editorial kind of change by the IET shortly before it's published. So at this point, we're not too worried about symbols and abbreviations unless there are some glaring errors.
Within Part 3, there's been very minor changes within this part, so there will be some changes where it refers to the AC and DC changes and some minor wording changes, but nothing of technical content within that part of the regulations.
So, Part 4, Chapter 41, Protection Against Electric Shock. There are a number of significant changes within this chapter. We're not going to try and go through them all. We've kind of pinpointed a few that we think are important, and that's what we're going to go through. So, Regulation 411.312, metallic pipes entering a building having an insulation section at their point now need not be connected to protective equipotential bonding. Disconnection time stated in Table 41.1 now apply for final circuits with a 63 amp or with one or more socket outlets, and 32 amps for final circuits supplying only fixed connection current using equipment.
Also within Chapter 41, Protection Against Electric Shock, our Regulation 411.3.3, which applies to socket outlets and RCD protection. Previously within the regulation, it stated the rated current of socket outlets not exceeding 20 amps had to have RCD protection. This has now been changed to 32 amps. So it's increased the rating of the socket outlets have to be covered by RCD protection. Also within this regulation, we had previous two exceptions to admit RCD protection. Now we had a note on this, or an exception for specifically labelled socket outlets, which allowed you to put a label on a socket outlet for a particular piece of equipment, then you could omit an RCD protection for that socket outlet. The second exception was, other than a dwelling, you can carry out a documented risk assessment to determine if RCD protection was necessary for those socket outlets. Particularly this was used in commercial properties, things like that. But both of those exceptions have now been deleted. So that means within this regulation, all socket outlets must be protected by RCDs not exceeding 30 milliamps. So this will lead to every installation having protection for socket outlets. Also, we have a new regulation 411.3.4, and as I said, this is a new regulation, and this requires within domestic and household premises that additional protection by an RCD not rated exceeding 30 milliamps shall be provided for all AC final circuits which supply luminaires. So this is an increased use of RCD protection for both socket outlets and for luminaire circuits within domestic premises.
Okay. Regulation 411.4.201, 2 and 3. These are the regulations that cover earth fault loop impedance tables for fuses and circuit breakers. There are no changes within the tables, but the changes to the document or the regulation numbers reflect that they are UK only clauses.
Within Chapter 42, Protection Against Thermal Effects, there's a new regulation being introduced. It's 421.1.7, and it requires the details of arc fault detection devices, which will mitigate fire risks where faults occur due to arc fault currents within the circuits. Now this is a requirement to be installed if there's a risk of those faults occurring within certain installations. It's not a requirement to install them in every installation. They've got to be looked at and assessed, then installed if required. The next regulation, 422.2.1, this has been redrafted to take into account the new requirements of the European Construction Regulations for Cables, CPR, which defines provisions necessary for cables and wires that are installed permanently within construction work, so fixed installations. And it refers to the next regulation, 422.3.4, what has also been modified to refer only to fire performance of classes of Euro class cables.
Okay. Chapter 44, protection against voltage disturbances and electromagnetic disturbances. 443, which deals with protection against over voltages, atmospheric origin, switching, has all been redrafted. The AQ criteria, which are conditions of external influence for lighting, determining if protection against transient overvoltage is needed, is no longer included in BS 7671. Instead, protection against that transient overvoltage has to be provided where the consequence caused by overvoltage affects human life, public services, cultural heritage, and commercial or industrial activity. For all other cases, a risk assessment has to be performed in order to determine if protection against transient overvoltage is required. The only exception to this, and to not provide protection, is for a single dwelling unit where the total value of the installation and equipment does not justify any such protection.
Within that section as well, there's new, you'll see new graphs and diagrams which shows maps of the UK, which is based on maps from 2001 to 2012, and it shows areas where lightning strikes are or have been taking place, and that is supposedly the basis of how you carry out your risk assessment. The problem we have with those graphs and diagrams are they're in colour, and to try and put them in grayscale to fit them in a document that doesn't produce colour diagrams could prove a bit difficult and cause problems in being able to see them. We have also a new chapter 46, and this covers devices for isolation and switching. It is a new chapter which has been introduced. There is new material within this section, but a lot of the information comes from regulations covered by 537, which have been moved and brought into chapter 46 to make things more clear on how you cover details of isolation and switching from non-automatic local and remote isolation, which will prevent and remove dangers from installations and powered equipment. This also covers areas where electric power equipment covers the scope of BSEN 60204, which has requirements that apply to that standard only. So the chapter is bringing things together in appropriate sections to make it clearer and easier to understand.
So that's the end of our webinar. I believe we have some questions, and our colleague is going to bring those over to us. There will be two future webinars. One will be looking at parts 5, 7 and 8, with the final webinar discussing part 6 and the appendices, given the nature of the changes in that particular section. We may also run a webinar, I believe, on comments.
On the comments, yes. So before the finishing date for the DPC, at the present time, the 23rd of August, we will do another webinar showing the amount of comments we have collated and which ones in particular should be looked at by yourselves and can cause difficulty for yourselves within the installation industry that are being brought in.
Okay, we've got any questions?
So now is done. Any questions you have?
We've got so far. One of them is, are we going to be able, do we need to do any training or an examination to upgrade from the 17th edition to the 18th edition?
It is very likely, because the book's going to be renamed. It won't be the 17th anymore, it will be the 18th edition. There are a lot of changes. There's a whole new part 8 proposed. So it is very likely that some training will be required, and it's likely where certain tenders call for the latest version of a qualification referring to BS 7671, where formerly that would have been the 17th edition. It's now going to be the 18th edition. So it is likely to be that you were required to train up to the 18th edition.
Now we're waiting to hear whether this is going to be a sitting guild style exam or it could be CPD training. It depends on the extent of requirements for that, but that will be come out in further developments once we get the draft finalised.
Okay, another question is, when will the 18th edition be enforced from?
The 18th edition will be published at this present moment in time on the 1st of July 2018. Then it will have a 6 months transitional period. Then it will come into force on the 1st of January 2019. So any jobs started after the 1st of July 2018, you can install to both standards. And when it comes to January 2019, you will need to install to the new standard. There will be a crossover period if jobs are started before January 2019, but if you are aware of the changes, you should be incorporating them in your changes.
Okay, well, that's all the questions we've had in this evening. So thank you for joining us. If you've got any more questions that we didn't have time to cover or that you've not been able to think of yet or get through to us, don't forget you can access the NAPIT Technical Helpline on 0345 543 0330. This also the online forum where you can discuss technical issues amongst yourselves at forum.napit.org.uk. We will make a recording of tonight's webinar available tomorrow morning on our YouTube channel, and we'll leave the webinar running for a few minutes to allow you to download the certificate from the handout section. If you could fill out the survey once the webinar closes, we'd really appreciate your feedback, and future webinars will be announced on the online forum, over social media and via email, so keep an eye out for those also. Once again, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Goodbye.